Want to travel around Europe this summer? Thanks to holiday rental sites, you'll have lots of choice when deciding where to stay. A sea view cottage, a glitzy penthouse, or whatever this is, you aren't stuck for options. Short-term rentals currently account for about a quarter of EU tourist accommodation, and platforms like Airbnb and Booking.com are booming. But although organising a holiday might now be easier, it isn't all good news. A common complaint is that more apartments for tourists mean fewer and more expensive long-term rentals. Local authorities are trying to manage the market, but it isn't easy. A lack of transparency around host activity makes it difficult to enforce rules and to create fair and effective restrictions in the first place. So, where do we go from here? The EU has a plan. Earlier this year, the European Parliament published a draft report on how it hopes to regulate short-term letting.
The main goal is to ensure that short-term rentals can function effectively in the single market and that data sharing rules are consistent across the Union.
That was Barbara Taller, an MEP working on the proposal. She's told us about the Parliament's aims, but how will these be achieved? Well, we've read the fine print and picked out 5 key ideas. MEPs want to make it mandatory for hosts to have a registration number. This should be an easy online process. Number 2, compliance by design. This catchy phrase means that platforms like Airbnb should be designed in such a way as to encourage people to follow the rules. If you don't have a number, you shouldn't be able to list. Number 3, local authorities should have the power to suspend registration numbers if they suspect illegal activity. Number 4, platforms like Airbnb should conduct their own checks to make sure hosts are following the rules. And finally, number 5, the big one. More data. The EU wants states to set up single data collection points at a national level that will allow information to flow between platforms and local authorities. This means host activities will be monitored more closely. For example, law enforcement will know how much of a property is being rented out and how often guests stay. And because of this, it should be easier for them to create and enforce proportionate rules. According to Malika Perrault, more regulation is a good thing. Malika is the co-president of ALDA, a social outreach association in southwest France that campaigns for housing rights.
Et nous, on s'est aperçu en tant qu'organisation citoyenne qu'il y avait des centaines et des centaines de sociétés qui ne s'étaient pas régularisées du tout et qui continuaient à penser qu'elles pouvaient violer impunément la loi. Et il y a 2 semaines, on a organisé une action d'occupation justement d'un Airbnb frauduleux, c'est-à-dire le Airbnb d'un propriétaire qui n'avait pas d'autorisation de changement d'usage, qui avait un faux numéro d'enregistrement et qui était enregistré sur 2 plateformes.
I also contacted the short-term rental platform Airbnb to hear their thoughts on the EU's plans. You might think that they would resist more regulation, but actually it's quite the opposite.
This is something that Airbnb has been calling for many years now. We're very invested in making sure it works. And what this proposal, we hope it will do, is on the one side, introduce clearer, simpler rules in terms of how local authorities introduce registration processes for hosts on the one side, but also on the other side, make sure that governments and authorities have the information they need, have the data they need to enforce against speculation activity or over-tourism or address other challenges that they're facing.
Essentially, instead of making the system for hosts more complicated, Airbnb thinks EU rules could simplify things. The European Parliament wants host registration to be an easy online process, which isn't always the case currently, and the compliance by design proposal could protect hosts against unintentional mistakes. Martin Brownsma, a bed and breakfast owner in Amsterdam, is also hopeful about the EU's compliance by design idea. He says that at the moment, it's too easy for hosts to make accidental errors.
A lot of those rules, for example, in Amsterdam, are not self-evident. So you can, I have, personally got in touch with a group of about 30 people that got really big fines of up to 12,000 euros, say, for mistakes that they were just not aware of. They didn't know those regulations.
Many cities have their own local rules to regulate short-term rentals, and Amsterdam's are particularly strict. You can only rent out your entire home for a maximum of 30 nights per year, unless you have a specific permit, and you can't host more than 4 guests. Martin welcomes the EU proposal because it could make host registration easier, but he says the Parliament could do more to combat what he sees as disproportionate local rules.
The European Union should step in a little bit more forcefully, not to specify in detail what a local municipality can and cannot do, but at least to clarify that there are some basic rights and that municipalities need to respect those as well.
At the moment, the EU is more focused on data sharing rather than weighing in on local rules. But that said, discussions are still ongoing.
We are making good progress. The vote in the committee is scheduled for right after the summer break. And I'm very positive that we can keep it. And then, as always, everything depends on the negotiations with member states.
If implemented, states will have a year to prepare themselves and comply with the new rules.